Hi and welcome everyone. Today I want to step back into the assessment of L- Malehya Brooks-Murray in relation to the case of Lilly and Jack Sullivan. There were two children. Lily is 6, Jack is 4, who are missing in Nova Scotia, Canada. Now, we have already looked at the interview we did the day after the children went missing, but this is going to be looking at um, whether we can find anything useful in the text messages that she and Malaya exchanged. That's the only other communication that we have from her. So let's have a look at what we can find. So on the 2nd of May of 2025, that's the day that the children went missing, which was a Friday. There were searches throughout the day after the children had been reported missing at around 10:01 AM. And at 11:03 PM, Malaya puts a post on FB, on Facebook, that says, "I want an Amber Alert for my children. I want my babies home. My children are not shy to strangers and will go with anyone they don't understand stranger at this point. They may have been taken. Please send an Amber Alert now." So let's look at that first. We have um, the same phrase that she has used in the interview. "I want my baby home." Now that is a phrase that has been used by a number of deceptive parents in missing children cases. If we look at Susan Smith, if we look at Chris Watts, they all talk about wanting their babies home or the night before being the worst night of their lives because their babies weren't in their beds. They tend to infantilise the children and make them seem more vulnerable by calling them babies. But here, I think more importantly, what Malaya is doing is, um, she's setting a trail for us to go towards a particular narrative, which is that the children have been taken. There are a couple of key things about that. First of all, it's unusual to say that you are sure that the children might have been taken because you keep all options open. But she is being a little bit open here. They may have been taken, but she's certainly setting a narrative. The difficulty is that that doesn't in any way give credence to the later narrative provided by a member of her family that she actually had had the children moved. Um, and I think that's really important to keep in mind at this point. She then goes on to take down the FB alert, takes down her FB page, but then puts it back up. And what she does here utterly blows my mind because, number 1, why would you, um, take your Facebook page down when that's a way in which you can get the word out that your children are missing and people need to look, particularly if you have contacts on there from the local area who can actually keep their eyes open for the children. She also changes her relationship status to stick to single and removes all photographs of Daniel. Then she deactivates her Facebook account. What mother in their right mind has her relationship status on Facebook as a priority on the day that their children go missing? I don't think there is a single mother out there who actually doesn't know what happens to their children who would, in fact, do that. And that obviously raises some issues. Now, we then move on to texts that were shown on A Crime in Shame. Shout out to Sonny and Shah and Kent, who are all doing an amazing job. And Belinda, I will say wholeheartedly, you are doing a fantastic job advocating for your grandchildren. And my hat goes off to you because you're doing that in the face of criticism and all of those things that happen in the YouTube world. So well done to you. Um, now, on day 1, so on the 2nd of May, there is a text message from Malaya that says, "The only bloodhound in Nova Scotia is out looking for them, and they have a better chance of finding them because they can track their scent. Thank you, Linda. Any help is best. I'm so scared. I'm worried. Don't know what to do." This is good, obviously, because she's describing that she's worried, but she doesn't demonstrate those words in actual feelings in the interview, and nor does she really say what she's scared and worried about. Obviously, it's the children, but you would be worried about what they are experiencing, where are they, who has them, are they on their own, all of those things. She doesn't reference any of that. It's like she's paying lip service to the idea of being scared and worried. And I'm not saying that she hasn't got any significant emotions because I think at this point in time, she grief, sadness and sorrow are the words used in the interview. So Belinda replies, "I know, stay strong. A lot of people are doing the best and keeping them in their prayers. What is your house number?" And she was going to be visiting the next day. So Malaya replies, I'm praying my baby's home. I'm so sick." Again, same phrase, "I want my babies home." And what's praying going to do? Get out and look for your children. Get out there in public and put the word out that you find your children. Don't simply say, "I'm praying and I want them to come home." You may very well want them to be home, but is that feasible knowing what happened to them, which I believe that she did. She gives it the address, which we know is on Gairloch Road in Westville. We do know the number of the road, but I'm not gonna share that. I'm not gonna dox anybody. Belinda replies, "See you tomorrow. You have your family with you, I hope." So she's checking in here to make sure that Malaya has got some support overnight. And she says, "Yes, everyone is here, even people I never thought would be here." So who do we think came to the house? And this is puzzling. Who do we think came to the house that she didn't think she had a good enough relationship with for them to come in such an emergent situation? That's interesting. So it's obvious that there are fractures in the foundations of her relationships, her family, and I think that that is something that certainly indicates some corroboration of the fact that Malaya may have been, um, in what she perceived to be, and we don't know the extent of this, a an abusive relationship or a controlling and coercive relationship with Daniel. Because one of the key things that any perpetrator of controlling and coercive behaviour will do, or abusive behaviour, is number one, they isolate their victim from their family and friends. And it seems that Malaya was certainly isolated from her family. Many of them said in interviews that they um, and things that have been put out that they haven't actually been to the property before, so she hasn't potentially seen them for some time. Um, and the next thing out of the perpetrator's playbook is to find a way to trap the victim in the relationship, and that can be by moving in early in the relationship. That happened here. Getting somebody pregnant, that happened here. Getting married to them, that didn't here. But 2 out of 3 ain't bad if we go off Meatloaf's, um, famous words. So Belinda replies, "Good, the more people," and then this is cut off on the screenshot, so I don't know what it says. And it goes on to say, I think she's referring to Cody, "doesn't have a phone, they can contact me." And Malaya says, "Okay, I gave them your number. Is he there now?" And Malaya says, "Yes, he's in his room." And Malaya says, "Okay, I have reason to believe they may have been taken by someone." Now, police are adamant that this isn't the case. There is no evidence of an abduction. That is what they have said repeatedly throughout this. They have not said there is no evidence of foul play. They have not said there is no evidence that something happened to those children on the property. They have not said there is no evidence that the children wandered off. They have said there is no evidence to suggest that they were abducted. That's significant, in my opinion. And it's quite clear that they didn't wander off, or it's highly unlikely that they didn't wander off because the search efforts were so extensive. Something would have been found. But more importantly, if they are adamant that there is no evidence of an abduction, what information does Malaya have to give her reason to believe that they may have been taken by someone? And has she actually shared that information with the RCMP? It's a curious statement to make, and I'm interested in whether or not she did pass on whatever that information was. And I'm interested to know what the information was that gave her that reason to believe. She also goes on to say they should have found them by now if they were in the woods, and I agree. If they were in the woods, they should have found them relatively quickly. They were there on scene and getting things moving within 10 minutes. Then we have, some more, texts that were shared by It's a Crime and Shame between Belinda and Malaya. Please forgive the fact that I use initials as opposed to full names. I like to have things in relative short form if I can. So actually I didn't explain my colour coding, so I always try and colour code any document that I make. In this document, the black is Malaya, the purple is Belinda, and the red is me giving my thoughts and putting little, um, indicators on for me when I'm talking about this. So we're back again to day 1, so the 2nd of May. "Have you heard anything yet? Were they going to school? Keep me updated." That was Belinda. Malaya's response was, "No, I was keeping them home today because they were sick with a cold, and they got outside the back door, and we can't hear that door, and they got outside." Now this is not quite verbatim, but it's certainly very similar to the, script that she used in the interview that she did, in terms of they got out of the back door, we can't hear that door, it's silent, and they then got outside. And it demonstrates that this is part of the script. If you are repeatedly using these significantly similar phraseologies for bits of the story that aren't necessarily important, they're important about why you, as a parent, didn't notice that your children were going outside, if that's what they're important from the perspective of you managing other people's, um, opinion, but it's not important in respect of finding Jack and Lily. We know they if that's what happened, you would say they got out of the house, we think they're in the woods. Not, "Well, they got out of the back door, we know it was that door because of X, and we can't hear that door, that's why we didn't notice they'd gone out, and, if we did, then we would have followed them, obviously, because we're such great, helicopter parents that we know exactly where our children are at all times." Um, she goes on to say, "They like exploring the woods and playing in the woods under our supervision." And again, that's perception management about their parenting, and it's displaying why they may have gone into the woods, which might be true because they've obviously built forts and things up. But we know that Jack didn't like going deep into the woods because we know more recent Janie's interview, she describes, and I quote, "I virtually had to carry Jack through the woods when they went for a walk." Now, we'll talk about Janie separately. The fact that she describes having to drag Jack and then corrects herself when she realizes that sounds terrible, is disturbing. But in terms of Malaya's viewpoint, I don't think it's clear that they do like going deep into the woods. They probably like going on the periphery of it, close to the backyard. She goes on to say, "I just can't believe this is actually happening. Who would believe that? Nobody can believe that the children have done this. I never thought they would run off on me like that." Now, this directly contradicts the later text to Belinda, where she describes that they like to wander a lot. So we've got a contradiction there within a string of texts that weren't too, distant in time from each other. She's describing in one that they don't like to run off and they're always under supervision, and in another that they like to wander. And I suspect that that's probably more likely to be the reality. Um, and why do they like to wander? Because they're being ignored in the house maybe, um, or, facing challenging circumstances in the household. So wandering off is the better option because you can just go into your own little play world with your sibling and ignore what's going on in the house. Um, she goes on to say, "I'm so distraught." And again, it's the right word. Yes, she would be distraught. She doesn't demonstrate that emotion. Doesn't give any, sensory information to back up that either. Um, and Belinda says, "You must be worried sick. Let me know anything, anytime." And she says, "I will, and yes, I am. Don't know what to do." And that's probably true. She doesn't know what to do because when something like this happens, whatever happened to these children, it's gonna leave you feeling as a parent, involved or not, like you don't know what to do. Not highly unlikely they planned to do something to the children if something has happened to them. More likely that it was something that got out of hand, it was an accident, it was, you know, and I'm not suggesting that I think this is what it is, but, it could be we think about what's happened in other cases, punishment that's gone too far, um, losing your temper with the child and just freaking out and doing something inappropriate, an accident where the children have accidentally got into something that has poorly or killed them, or, um, you're on rugs and you advertently do something whilst in that, state of being high, that has resulted in their death. It could be an animal that has gotten out of control. We know that the dogs didn't like Lilly and Jack because of the noises that they made. Um, the dogs that belonged to, Janie. Now, it's not clear how many dogs she has and what dogs they are. We've seen one in the interview video from Janie. That is not the dog that Belinda heard on the day that she was there. There is some indication that she either owns 2 dogs or that Justin's got a bigger dog. We don't know what type that is. That could have had something to do with it. Certainly, a dog was in that property that she didn't want the police to go in and face because something might happen to the dog because of its reaction. So did Lily or Jack just wander in to grandma's and the dog went ballistic? I don't know. I really do not know what happened, but I can come up with some indicators based on the things that have particularly stood out in the interviews by the people who I believe could be involved. So that would be Daniel, Janie, potentially Justin, Malaya in terms of the after events, so the cover up and the scripting and all of that. We know that there is something about the noise that that they often made, talking your ear off, screaming, the fact that the dogs weren't happy with them. there is definitely something around the dog based on Janie's response when the police came there. There is clearly something about Ruggs being involved in some format potentially because that has become an in the, statements by the family. And, um, there is a repetitive focus on Jack not keeping a pull-up on. Um, so any of those scenarios could have played out. All of them would make you think, "I don't know what to do at this point. Lost my children. I've only got Meadow left. I want to protect her and make sure she stays with me." And there could be an element of fear around consequences from the Martel Mackenzie family. And we've certainly heard a great deal being made of the, reputation of the Mackenzie clan as formidable, let's describe it like that. Um, but if we move on, because I don't want to take lots of time in this video, so are your neighbours close at all? And the answer was no, not too close. We live on Gairloch Road. I lean on me. So you say one could have been an accident, the other one could have been deliberate. I don't know though, that's just my thoughts, and yes, I agree. I think there is, some indications in the statements that have been given by the family that something happened to Jack first, then we have Lily afterwards, basically trying to work out what's going on and getting involved, coming into the room, all of those things. And it may be that she was being very loud and drawing attention and that type of thing, so they decided that, she needed to be silenced as it were, and that could be a possibility, and I'm sure that that would be something that they would look. I think the posting links thing is, so where you say deliberate, full stop, I, for I don't know, that, thinks it's a link because it's got a full stop and then no space after it, and so that'll be how you end up getting warned about posting links. It just thinks that it is a link. Um, so make sure that if you use punctuation that there's a space after any full stops. Witness maybe, yeah, indeed. She could have witnessed it or she could have witnessed the aftermath. Either I think would cause, an issue. Particularly when you're in the frenzy of something's happened that you don't know, um, how and why it's happened, but, you think, "I've got no idea how to deal with this." I suspect that you're not thinking clearly at that point, and you could make some very, difficult and slightly wrong decisions. If you can hear a noise in the background that sounds like snoring, that's because my new dog, Staffy, is in fact in the snoring. Um, but that's good because at least she's not diving all over me trying to play while I'm talking to you guys. She's beautiful, but slightly giddy. 3-year-old Steffi, who is a rescue, and she's amazing, but our other dog does not like sharing her house. quite likes Effie, but she doesn't like the idea of sharing us and the house. Um, so yeah, we've had an interesting week so far. We're on day 5. It's been challenging, fun, and rewarding at the same time. But she's absolutely well away at the moment. But back to this. So, um, Malaya tells us here that there are no close neighbours, and she says that we live on Gairloch Road, as though that explains everything in terms of no close neighbours. And I understand from what other people have said that that is the case, that the homes are very spread apart. Belinda says, "I heard they are bringing in other teams to search, so hoping they come home soon." And Malaya says, "I hope so too." They've been missing since 9:40 AM, so I am building a timeline that identifies all of the different timelines that people have given us. So she describes 9:40 as the time that they've been missing since, and this is where she says they like to wander a lot, which, as we talked about previously, is not what she said in other messages and on the news. She describes that they don't go outside without being watched, um, and she can't believe that they would run off on her like that. So there is a contradiction there in terms of what she says. Belinda says you want to demand more searches, and she says we have a big search team right now, and more are coming. They also want information about Cody because he doesn't see them. The police do. So we know that the police looked at Cody, but they have in fact cleared him at this point. And Belinda says, "God, I wish I lived closer." And Malaya says, "Yes, I know. We have drones, dogs, and helicopters." So she's trying to indicate that, everything that's possible is being done, which actually you'd be saying, "Yeah, we need more searchers. Why won't they let us search as well as the trained searchers? I need to find my children. I need to get everybody that I know out there searching because they're gonna recognise us and they'll come to us," all of those things. But there isn't any of that. It's just, you know, all of these things are being done, so don't worry about it, Belinda. And Belinda says, "That's not a problem, they can call me too." And Malaya says, "Okay, I might get you on the phone with the police." And Belinda says, "Okay." And then later on, we have some more messages. So, "Have you heard anything yet? Are locals allowed to search too? Did they have coats or boots on, do you know?" So she's asking sensible things, Belinda. She wants to know, like, can we come down and search? Do we know if they've got coats and boots on? Are they gonna be at least protected from the elements a little bit by their clothing? Um, and Malaya says, "No, no yet." So I think it's meant to say not yet. They have boots on, and Lily has her white backpack with strawberries on it, and she should be in pink and Jack in darker coloured clothes. Now, the fact that she says "should be," well, that means she doesn't know what they had on. She's just either guessing or she is, um, recalling what Daniel has told her. So Jack has dino boots, Lily has pink boots, and it matches, what they said in the meeting in terms of Lily's backpack, the fact that they've got their boots on, and she appears to be trying to follow Daniel's narrative, but it's clear that she doesn't know what they've got on. Um, and I think that the reference to darker clothes doesn't actually match, what has been said. So there's been brown mentioned as a colour, and I think initially Daniel just simply didn't know, what he had on. So there's some confusion around what they had on, and it's clear that, either they hadn't thought that far ahead or they just simply hadn't looked at the children that morning. And it may be that Malaya didn't know what they had on because whatever happened, Daniel dealt with the immediate aftermath and then told her, and that could be the reason, potentially. And of course, this is all my thoughts and considerations and opinions. Nobody's been accused of anything directly, nobody's been charged with any offences, and certainly nobody has been convicted of anything. So we've got to make sure, that we are careful about how we portray this. But this is all just my kind of musings on the thought, on the ideas that might have happened. Tricky. Um, it's good to have someone, local in the chat, and, um, it always stands out to me that people from the areas where these cases occur kind of pull together around the situation, um, and it shows a great sense of community. Now, in that first response, Malaya hasn't replied to the question about whether locals were allowed to search, so Belinda actually asks it again, and she says, "You're welcome to come and search with people. However, the search and rescue don't want too many others in the woods because they're going by protocol. Many are suspecting they were picked up by somebody." Now, the first part, absolutely, I believe that that is correct. They're gonna be wanting to find any clues. They're also using canines. If you have other people going into the woods and the dogs are searching for the freshest scent, they could get confused and think that, and lock onto the scent of a person that's searching instead of Jack and Lily. So that part makes absolute sense. Again, she talks about many are suspecting they were picked up by somebody. Who are these many? Because we know it isn't the RCMP. They've made it absolutely abundantly clear that they have no evidence that they were abducted. So on what basis is she saying this? And is this to support her push for an Amber Alert as opposed to actually being based on any information? But if it is based on some information, what the heck is that information? And has she shared it with the RCMP? So lean on me. You say part of you thinks that the dog got to Jack and Lily protecting his mother. Her dogs are very important to her, and she seems to make sure we know exactly where the dog was. Yeah, I agree. Lean on me. I think there is certainly something that keeps drawing me back to this issue about the dogs, and I don't like to think of it as a possibility because for me, I hate to think of the fact that it might have happened, but we know that some dogs will respond badly to children. Some dogs will respond badly to anybody coming onto their property. Some dogs will want to play with a small child, but do it in a way that causes them serious injury. I mean, this new dog that we've got, she's a big staffy. She's not at the smaller end of the scale, and she's come with, at 3 years old, the the ability to play fight quite violently. We're trying to train her out of that. We're only on day 5, but my word, she bruises me, and I'm a grown adult, so what would she do to a child if she was doing that? Um, so it is a real possibility, and I certainly, I think that it's a sensitive subject for Janie, and that's what makes me keep coming back to it. Um, Beverly lawyer, that's really interesting. I'm also called Beth and a lawyer, and it's lovely to meet you. Um, what do I think happened? What does everybody think happened? Well, I can't speak for anybody else. I don't like to say I think a specific thing happened. What I will say is that I think it's highly unlikely they wandered into the woods. I think it's even more unlikely that Malaya put them in a car, because if she was stood there with Meadow on her hip, they would all four have got in that car if she was scared and needing to get away. And I don't think it was a stranger abduction. So that leaves one possibility really, and that is I've not left that house in terms of what happened. So I think they have massively skipped over Thursday. Don't refer to it at all, apart from to say that the children were seen in public. And that makes me think that potentially something happened on Thursday night or into the early hours of Friday morning. Jack's look, yeah, absolutely. That's another issue, and that could have been, well, two things really. One could be a reason why the dog might have wanted to play with him, or might have responded in a particular way to him. It could be that that was the inciting factor for why he was getting in trouble and things went wrong. Um, yeah, the bruising, I think a lot of people have made the connection between the CPS investigation and the bruising, but we don't actually know that the two are connected. The report about the CPS involvement was around home conditions, not around physical harm. They're two very different types of investigation that you would do. But you would have thought, given that the school are mandated reporters, that they would have reported those incidents of bruising where they had seen it, assuming that the children didn't give an explanation that seemed innocent. Um, and that's where it can get a little bit tricky, I found. Um, there needs to be some indication that it was as the result of harm by an adult in the property, um, for CPS to deal with it and take it seriously. So, Drippy, you said Malaya was planning her exit. She bought a car shortly before the kids went missing. They were having financial issues. She was making plans to leave, and that's the most dangerous time for her and the kids, absolutely. So, we know that she was planning to leave. We don't know for certain that Daniel knew that she was planning to leave, but I think there's been some indication that he may have known, may have found out, and if that is the case, then that could absolutely have been a precipitating factor in terms of why something happened. And it absolutely it could be him punishing Malaya by hurting the one thing that means everything to her. Technically, that might have been Meadow rather than the other two, based on what we've heard so far, but Meadow's his child, and so that would be maybe a step too far in his mind. So that could be a potential. Um, it could be that they were caught in the crossfire of an argument between Daniel and Malaya about her leaving, or about anything for that matter. Um, so that's one of the higher risk elements of children being in a domestic abuse environment, is that they are potentially likely to become caught in the crossfire and injured. And sometimes that injury can be significant or fatal. Um, yeah, and if he is using rugs, which we know that he's indicated by his own words, Daniel, that is not the Daniel that Malehya first met. Um, so there is a reasonably high likelihood that he may have returned to his drug use. Um, Missy, it's lovely to see you in chat. We're looking at Malehya's communication, but I'm just kind of talking about the different comments that people have made so far. And yeah, that's the way that I'm trying to deal with it as well, is to soak up every bit of information that I can and then try and draw conclusions from that. And putting together a timeline with all the different timelines embodied within it so that we can see all the different contradictory elements in the timeline, um, and going methodically through the communication of the different people, except for it keeps going on. So it could be a never-ending task, but I'm doing my best to try and get it to a reasonable point, and then we can always do updates when people do any other um, statements and comments in chats and such like. Um, Now, before I moved on to the comments, we were looking at the fact that Malehya says many are suspecting that they were picked up by somebody. And she says, because there's no trace of them or Lily's backpack. Well, we know, the RCMP know, and pretty much any sensible person knows that there are not only two options. It's not only they wandered into the woods or they were abducted by somebody. There is a range of things that could have happened. Um, and the most significant one being that something happened in the property. And the fact that there's no evidence in the woods will kind of lend credence to the fact that something happening in the property is the more likely scenario. Do they go out on the road? Do they go out to the road? Sorry. And Malehya says normally no, but if they were in the front yard and someone stopped and convinced them to come over, they would go. They don't understand stranger danger. So again, here she's kind of pushing that abduction narrative. There could be two reasons for this. One, she's trying to divert attention away from whatever happened, or she's using these narratives around abduction to force the police to issue an Amber Alert. The police want to really broaden their search and plug highways. That should have been done first thing. And yeah, I agree very much. I think it would have been important for them to try and kind of close down the immediate area to maximise the chances of finding these kids. Now, on May the 3rd, so this is the day 2, so the day after they go missing, Belinda messages a number of times but gets absolutely no answer. So we've got, how is everything? Any news whatsoever? Prince gone out, or are they thinking something else? I think they just put out another Amber Alert. Then on the next day, so May the 4th, so that's day 3 of the search. Does your mother-in-law live in the little trailer beside you with the dog inside? I hope you're not upset with me about Lily's communication. And that's talking about the fact that Belinda described that the children do have some struggles with the communication. I just people want people to see how vulnerable the kids are. Just don't understand why some people are so upset about this. It doesn't matter what the skills are or not. They need to be found. And then she says, just saw Daniel's post. We're headed up there tomorrow to help with the search. Now, so that would have been she'd already been to the property. This is her saying that she would be coming back. And in terms of the issue around the children's communication, of course, it is quite important because if you have children that are missing, knowing that they can communicate or knowing that they can't communicate well makes a difference to how you approach the children. Um, Hi, Mark. Hi, Angelina and Mariska. Um, yeah, so Missy, do you mean in terms of the mum of Daniel's other children is refusing to let them see the kids? I think that would make sense. I would if I was them. Hi, Sonny. Um, Lovely to see you. Sorry I've not got my camera on everybody because I'm basically sat in bed doing this. Because it's the only way I can keep the puppy calm long enough to do this live. Sonny, you missed the beginning. We've got a new dog, a rescue staffy who is absolutely off its rocker. She's beautiful and loopy all at the same time. She's fast asleep at the moment, so I do warn you, you are likely to hear snoring. Yay for me, I have to listen to both her and my husband snoring each night. Um, yeah, we just need Shah and Kent, I suppose, and then we'd have a native girl. I think we'd have a good chunk of people from the crime and shame community. Um, so let's get back to these messages. At the moment, Sonny, I'm just trying to finish off the Malehya Brooks communication breakdown. So I'm going through the messages that you showed on your channel. What I've done is transcribed them. So the purple is Belinda, the black is Malehya, and any red is my notes, basically. And feel free to screenshot this, guys, if you want to, as I scroll down, absolutely, and use it in any way you see fit. Um, so Tuesday the 6th, so that's day 5, and at 8:46 p.m., Belinda messages, Malaya, can I ask you a question? Why did you stop visiting with the kids? I just thought you needed time to convince Daniel he had nothing to worry about. I remember you said he thought you were only coming because you wanted to see Cody. I don't understand because we invited him too. And Malaya's response is, he never wanted me to go, and I never did. Um, I never knew why he was controlling. Now, this is the first time I think we see Malaya or anyone mention this potentially coercive and controlling relationship. And it certainly has a lot of the hallmark indicators we talked about earlier around isolation, um, finding a way to trap, i.e., moving in early, having a child early, getting married early. Um, and it may be absolutely correct that that is the type of relationship that it is. I do not think that if that is accurate, that Darren's um, narrative would be likely at all in the way that it is described. And it doesn't match anything that Janie says, which is where he says he got most of his information. So I've entirely discounted his view and input, to be fair. Um, Hi, Susanna. Yeah, Friday would be good, sunny. I'm off this week, so literally I can stay up late and do whatever suits you, really. Um, Slightly lacking in sleep in any event this week because of this new dog, Pansy, the resident little monster, um, Sharky that thinks she is as big as a lion, uh, is causing us some problems because she doesn't want to share us. Um, but yeah, Friday would be great. Um, And hopefully by then I might have actually finished putting together this, amalgamation of timelines that I'm trying to pull together. Um, so yeah, he's isolating her from her support systems. He's demonstrating jealousy over the biological father of the children, and family involvement, so Belinda's involvement. And I think this is where the tide starts to turn. So this particular message is where she's kind of thinking, okay, I want to put my narrative out there. I don't want to speak in public. This is a good way to start to describe what's happened and what I've been living with. Um, if he's controlling where she goes and who she sees, then absolutely that fits the definition of a coercing and controlling relationship. Um, and then why didn't you give us your address? We'd have come there for visits. And Malaya says he never wanted me to give it, and I never wanted to stay there. I mean, she made the choice to move in, but if she's already kind of hooked by him, I'll keep an eye open for your email, Sonny. If she's already hooked by him, by the old Daniel that she went on the first date under the waterfall with, then it's easy to fall into progressing quickly with a relationship, and you think, well, I can get this place, turned around and looking lovely, not realizing that actually you'll probably be controlled and prevented from doing that in any event. Um, Lean on me. I am so sorry that happened to you. And I think that what I find a little bit, um, difficult to grasp is why Malaya would choose a day, and I think Shara said this several times, choose a day when Daniel was there but asleep, to leave or attempt to leave or to get the children away. You would choose a day when he was at work and when Janie had gone out, because I suspect that if he is that type of controlling person, he would use Janie as a tool, for controlling Malaya. They do tend to use, everything that they can think of conceivably to use as a tool. My husband and I were talking earlier about a dog that we used to walk. I ran a pet care service for a couple of years, and it was an American bully who was obviously quite big, and exceptionally boisterous. And the male owner was built with muscles on muscles on muscles, and the woman was very petite, and she was terrified of this dog. he didn't train it, he just relied on his brute strength. And we were just discussing it because we were talking about training, Effie, the new pup, and, um, it suddenly occurred to me that there's a good chance that he potentially used that dog as a tool for controlling her, because we were talking about the fact that, it's risky for her physically coming into the home, when the dog is confined in the hallway right inside the front door. If she's terrified of it and it's out of control in her presence, getting her to come home and through that front door when the husband isn't there would be quite dangerous. And then it started making me think about how their relationship was, and, um, there's a possibility that that was the case. And that could have happened here in terms of the dogs that were in, Janie's care. And yeah, absolutely, Drippy. I think, if I was living in that situation, having been somebody who cared for my home before, as Belinda described, I would be ashamed, and probably not want people to come around either. God, no, I hadn't heard about Ozzy. Blimey. Yeah, yeah, definitely a legend. But yeah, lean on me. I'm so sorry that you had to go through that situation, and I'm glad that you did get the courage. Um, digress all you like, Drippy. It's interesting to kind of go off on a tangent sometimes, isn't it? Um, I told you to go and give birth to a KFC bucket. I've not seen the last couple of nights of lives because I've been absolutely beggared by the end of the day. Just kind of collapsed into bed. We spent all day trying to kind of deal with these two monsters that I've got in the house. Janie said she would have stood up to Daniel. Yeah, I'm not so sure. I think, often perpetrators, they're quite underhand the ways that they exercise their control, and it's not clear from the outside of the home what's happening. And he may be very compliant and submissive to his mum, but not to Janie because not to Malaya because, well, there's two things, isn't there? There is kind of essentially a repetition of something that he's seen growing up. There is essentially, playing out ideals around what men and women's roles in relationships are that he's seen or picked up from the community around him. Um, or, and this is sometimes seen, if you've got quite, a formidable mother and a very submissive and kind of subservient son, that when they then do come into a relationship, they're absolutely adamant they're not gonna be the one that's controlled by another woman. They're already controlled by their mother, they don't need another one adding to it, and so they exert control first to make sure that it doesn't happen. Yeah, Darren's conspiracy, and narrative is just completely fallen off the edge of the planet as far as I'm concerned. And if Darren was saying, the RCMP are not doing enough, you know, just get your finger out, get these children found, that's one thing, but what he's actually saying is, "I came up with a theory and they didn't like it, therefore they're" whatever he called them, I can't remember the words that he used, but they were inappropriate. Um, and yeah, Lily having a black eye coming straight from Daniel's mouth, I think, that's him again. He's trying to uh, form the narrative around why any bruises might be there if the children are found. What that does indicate to me, though, is that Daniel thinks that they may be close to being found wherever they've been, um, and he feels the need to um, control perceptions about who might have done what to. Glad to hear that you're a warrior now, Lean on me. I think, the reality is that sometimes these experiences, they're very difficult to deal with in the moment, and nobody would want anyone to go through that, but it can certainly inadvertently make you a much stronger person. Um, but I always think it it's almost a case of you're strong, um, regardless of what you've faced, not because of it. They're not the reason that you're strong. You were strong anyway because you built up courage to leave. I can We're just missing Shah, aren't we? Um, so let's have a look. What else has anybody said? Sorry, my computer's just turned the screen off. That's not helpful. Do, do, do. Oh, yikes. I literally can't see my screen anymore, people. You've gotta love technology. My phone has also been playing silly buggers all day. Now, right, let me see. Why are we frozen? Guys, can you still all hear me at the moment, even though my screen is playing ridiculous games with me? Right. Right, okay. Given that my computer's decided it's being absolutely obnoxious, I'm gonna end the stream here, and we'll look at the very last bit, tomorrow, hopefully. Um, Missy, literally today I have got a phone that keeps freezing, my computer keeps freezing. I think like I'm giving off some kind of break my technology, energy today. But I will see you all soon, and I'll see you all on Sunnies on Friday, hopefully. You won't actually let me end the stream. Right. Right, now then, let's see if that's made any difference. Am I sounding any better at this point? Fabulous, right, okay, well, we don't need to leave then. I went out of the thing, I had to literally close the window. Not help. Let me just find the document again. There we go. Okay, add you to there. Right, marvellous. Right, let's go back and have a look at these comments and just see what everybody's saying. Yeah, I mean, they'd have to do a really good clean-up job, wouldn't they? But, um, what really struck me is, um, Janie saying that her camper had been searched 3 times, but the trailer had only been searched once. Why did they keep going back to the trailer, to the camper? What was it that kept dragging them back there? And I don't necessarily think that the dogs were involved, but I'm just giving it as a possibility really, looking at the different, options. Um, so yeah, Lean On Me, you were just as scared of his mother as him, and I think that strikes me as potentially the case that she was kind of Janie was assisting Daniel in his control of Malaya. And you absolutely did an amazing job getting away from him and, getting your life sorted and back on track. It takes so much, courage and strength to do that, and I take my hat off to you completely. Um, Susanna, um, the dog, and as Kent says, I think there there's a fair chance that there would be some evidence left because they're not, I can't imagine that they're particularly brilliant at cleaning, although the RV was spotless, to be fair. Um, but I think it's the word Jack was out, that makes me think that potentially it was something, was initially, him. It is really good that everybody kind of sticks together in this community, so I really appreciate everybody's support. Oh, drippy grief, that sounds awful. My word, you were lucky, I think, if you did manage to prevent them from getting through the door. Great strategic thinking to find a way to stop them. Jump from a moving car. Yikes. Painful. Yeah, I think if there was a dog attack, there's likely to be some evidence that they weren't able to clean up. I think it's more likely to be something akin to either an accident with rugs or, um, violent behaviour, um, which may have been contributed to by substances, being used. But the reason for that, outburst, if it was an outburst, I think is we can kind of pull from those bits that I pointed out before that seem to be kind of touchy subjects for the family, so they pull up the dog, and the noise that the children make, um, and, the children using all of Janie's actual grandchildren's things while they're not there and that type of thing. I think, there might be some scope in that in terms of reasons. Only, Susanna, possibly, yeah. I mean, you use one of the children's boots that's already got their scent on it to plant a boot print that would lead dogs to a particular point, but I think they'd already tracked them up that pathway anyway because they will have gone up and down it so many times. Drippy suspected that he did something or knew that he did, and I think the latter is potentially more realistic, but not 100% certain on that. Yeah, so if drugs were involved, absolutely. If you know that there is a risk to your child because of where you are staying, whether that's from risky adults or some other issue at the property, and you do nothing about it, but you do stay there, then you are complicit in the sense that you allow things to happen. whether you could say that, um, Malaya could reasonably foresee what happened to these children if she knows what happened to them is another matter. Um, Sunny. Oh, yeah. I think we all need to love ourselves. That's the reality. Um, it's important to love each other, but definitely important to love yourself. I'm just trying to scroll down because you've all gone wild in the chat. So I'm trying to Missy, absolutely. I thought about this the other day. So they were talking about drones going over the property, and Jamie mentioned it in the interview, and I thought, well, yeah, of course they are, because they'll be keeping a fucking eye on what you're doing. Absolutely. You know, the RCMP aren't going to just go, oh, well, we're investigating, but we won't keep an eye on what's happening at that property. And it would be a very difficult property to surveil in any other way, really. Um, I think drones would be the main way of doing that. Have to be a mixed breed. I can't imagine someone having a tamed wolf. You know, you get wolf dogs that are part wolf, part, domesticated breed, and there can be varying percentages of wolf in there. Um, and of course, if you've got wild animal bred into your domesticated animal, then of course you heighten the risk of them acting like a wild animal. Um, can they tell with forensics if there's any DNA on the pink blanket, if alive or dead? No. They would be able to probably see if there are any indications of decomposition on the blanket. Um, but in terms of the actual fluids that they can find containing the DNA, I think no, not really. Um, Although I could be entirely wrong on that. My computer is um, yeah, in terms of Malaya leaving, if meth was involved, it would have been a long time ago. Um, you know, parents put up with many, many things to keep a family together. And often it is not the safest option for your children, and it's not the best option for your children. People think that staying together is one of the most important things, and honestly, it's not. Keeping your children safe is the most important thing. Probably everyone in the county is doing a drive-by. I should think that there's more people travelling down that road now than there has ever been before in the history of the area, but I think the police will specifically have drones, cameras, all manner of things, keeping an eye on what's going on and where the residents are and what they're doing, and the same for Malaya. I think in terms of the dog being put down, I think she was worried it would do something to the police officers. Now, that in itself raises a concern about having a dog that is a risk to visitors in the presence of young children. Dogs, we breed them to guard our properties. But the reality is, if you've got a dog that you've got a relationship with and they're trained, just take it out of the trailer while the police search. It should never have been a sticking point. The fact that it was raises my suspicion level about the trailer, about the camper, about Janie's involvement, about what she knows, and about the dog. Um, yeah, they did talk about the blanket looking like it's old. Um, but, they've sent it for forensics, and no doubt we'll find out in due course whether it displays anything. It's likely to have something on it from them because kids drool all over the blankets. I think the key thing is, has it got any blood on it? Has it got any other inappropriate bodily fluids on it? I think in terms, Trippy, of how it got there and how useful it is, I think my view on it is that it is most likely completely irrelevant, and it was not dragged there by animals, but I think it was planted by a family member. The fact that the family members are the ones that found it when there was such a large search party leads me to believe it was planted by one of them. Yeah, Layla, I think it is. It's a distraction tactic, very much a distraction tactic. Yeah, chain of custody. A family member found it, photographed it, left. The police then came back and removed it, and then they got Daniel to video himself taking the other one out of the trash, which means that there's no chain of custody there either, because they don't know whether or not it was already in the trash or whether Daniel just put it in there to make the video. So yeah, absolutely. I think this is why it's important that it is the trained searchers and the RCMP or the police in other areas that are the ones who are doing the searches. And they should have noted that there was a blanket in the trash bags in any event, because they should have been looking through that trash to make sure that there's no evidence of cleanup operation. Um, the whole place is indeed a crime scene. They should have had a cadaver dog in. I have no clue why they would not do that. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I think that the RCMP are doing the job behind the scenes, and I think that they've probably got a massive amount of information that we know absolutely nothing about. But in terms of the cadaver dogs, they haven't used them, and I think that that is an absolute travesty. Where you've got children this young that have just disappeared off the face of the earth, it should be like, search the property, check to see if the kids are there, get cadaver dogs in on day one, and lock the place down as a crime scene and do a proper forensic search. Daniel's brother, Angelina, I think he keeps being mentioned by family members, which leads me to believe that he's involved in some way or knows something more than he ought. And in terms of his demeanour in that picture where he's reclined with his hands behind his head, like he's sunbathing for the day on that RV after I can't remember whether it was day 1 or day 2, during the search, is just horrendous. Why would you be lay there so relaxed, you know? You should be, like, intently watching what everybody's doing because it's such an emergent situation, and these children that, you know, to all intents and purposes are his niece and nephew are missing. Um, yeah, so I think there is something there in terms of being honestly, but I've not yet kind of come to a conclusion about what it is. Yeah, dripping. Absolutely, it should be treated as a crime scene, and the RCMP even indicated that that is what they did. They didn't because they didn't lock it down as a crime scene. Layla, I've not looked at the stats in terms of trafficking, through that area, but it's certainly a possibility. I think it would be unusual to take 2 children at once for that. Um, we know that there was a rumor around a potential party or gathering at the property a day or 2 before the children were reported missing. Could they have been taken by somebody, exchanged with somebody as a result of something that happened on that day? It's a possibility, but I think it's less of a possibility than something that's happened to them on the property. But that being said, I'll temper that with the fact that I don't know what the stats are in terms of I mean, certainly Lily is in the age range that becomes attractive to a certain customer base. Oh, interesting. Rumours around Malaya and Justin, you think? Mm, I mean, I don't want to go into that too deeply, obviously, given that, we've not got any kind of credible information around it. But yeah, jealousy is a hugely, um, a huge, really big, um, factor in a lot of violent crimes. Okay, so it's more older children in that area that are trafficked, so that's, another interesting information. I'll look into that actually and just see, what I can find, in terms of stats if I get a chance this week. So there yeah, that's a fair comment, Mariska. Yeah, lean on me. I think there is definitely something around the cabins in the wood, the way that he described it. Can't remember the exact wording that he used, but when we look at Daniel's stuff, I'll kind of break that down a little bit more. Drippy, so your opinion is that Janie had nothing to do with it, but she's covering for Daniel. And yeah, I think there is definitely some indication that there is some involvement, and I don't mean that she is, like, physically involved in the act, which could be true, but she could be a potential, um, influence on Daniel in terms of what happened, and also I think there is clear indications in what Janie says that um, she has knowledge about what happened and will do anything to back up her sons. Um, she gives me vibes of, Brian Laundrie's mum, honestly, and with her burn after reading letter. Yeah, I'd be interested to know, Susan, if they've done, um I'm sorry, it's Mariska that said it, if they've used luminol in both the trailer and the, RV. Um, Shane is definitely not a good liar, you're correct. Um, I I would suspect that they have done luminol. It would be bizarre if they didn't. Let's There's only a few of these messages left. I want to get them bottomed off tonight, so I'll just go through them really quickly. So, Belinda's stating that she really wished that Malaya had reached out and she would have done what she could to help, because she's getting the vibe here from Malaya that, it was a controlling relationship. And she did have support available should she have wanted to take it. Unfortunately, a person who is in that type of relationship has to get to a certain place in their own psychology before they're able to seek the support that they need. And it isn't simple, "Well, why didn't you leave?" I think that question is a really provocative one to people who have been in that situation. There are so many factors, and people can literally feel like they have no other option. Um, the control can be so underhand and insidious and kind of creep through time that you literally don't feel like there is anyone anywhere that could help and that you will always be found and brought back. So I understand why people don't leave. The thing that bothers me about this case is that the scenario that was put forward where Malaya is attempting to leave by putting 2 children in a car, going back with Meadow, doing something else, and then leaving with her later is about as far off the mark as what I would expect someone to do as you can get, because you would want to all stay together. You want your children in your sight so you know they're safe. You would want to leave as a family of mother and children or father and children if it's the father who's the victim, and you'd want to make sure that you were all together. She had a car, so she could have just got in the car and driven away. She could have asked for help, and then all of them got in the car, and just had in a bag things that she absolutely needs, like their documentation and stuff. So I just think that scenario has been completely discredited. But then we've got some more messages. Now, they were aired by, Sunny on the 22nd of June. again between Belinda and Malaya. I don't know when they're from, it's not clear from the screenshot. But Belinda asks, "Do you believe in your heart that Daniel could have hurt them?" Malaya's response is, "I don't know, but he's been acting suspicious and he's too worried about what people think about him, not focusing on my kids at all." Now, there are a few things about this response. I'll finish the response first and then I'll look at what I think about it. So she goes on to say, "Everything he's doing is odd, and the police have advised him to stay away from the media and to stop contacting me. And he's also tried to steal money from my account through his Temu, because my card was attached to his account, so everything is not right. My main focus right now is to protect Meadow and find my kids." Now, that could indicate, first of all, that she actually doesn't know what happened when she's saying that her, um, main goal is to protect Meadow and find the children. But I think the fact that protect Meadow is number one, when there's no real aggravated threat to her at this point other than from CPS, seems very strange. Your first priority would be finding the missing children if you didn't know what had happened to them. But she's turning on Daniel at this point and pointing the finger at him. That often happens where something has happened to children. The parents will begin supporting each other, giving each other an alibi, using script, backing each other up. But then when things begin to heat up, one or both of them will start pointing the finger at the other parent because your overall instinct of self-preservation kicks in. It's a natural human reaction. The police use that to their advantage when they're interviewing people, and they use it to get them to, start pointing the finger at each other and telling what actually happened. And it could be warranted here that she's pointing the finger at him. I think he remains a prime suspect, honestly. But if she is the guilty party, and I can't rule that out completely, um, this could be an attempt at distraction from people looking at her. When she describes him as when she describes that everything is odd, that could be explained by the panic after something untoward had happened. So if there had been an accident or, a drug-fueled incident or a an outbreak of violence that wasn't intended or planned, then you would go into a panic trying to rectify the situation after and clear up and cover up. Also, if he used drugs, then that can create that same behaviour, um, of acting very strange, kind of darting about the place. I think she described, running around the place totally out of control. So, um, it could be either of those things that causes that. But for me, the biggest thing in that is that she talks about him not focusing on her children and really hot calling the kettle black. He's not their biological father. He's not even their stepfather. They aren't married. She's the one who ran off and went into hiding and became silent. Daniel hasn't actually been speaking out. So in some respects, he's focusing on the children, but he's focusing on the wrong things about the children being missing. But I do think that's kind of a blindingly ridiculous comment for her to make. So, what does everybody think about that element? who's getting things from Amazon. What am I missing? Why isn't the mother begging for answers? Beverly, I absolutely agree. Um, I don't think any reasonable, innocent, lacking in any guilty knowledge mother would go silent. Missy, yeah, unfortunately, there are a lot of parents who think of themselves before the kids. The kids are an afterthought, and no, and I'm not saying this is the case with Lily and Jack, but there are many children in this world who are ignored, who are neglected, who are just, a problem that the parents have to deal with. They're a nuisance, and it's awful to watch and to see, and I think as a society, we need to pick that up when we see it and do something about it. And I absolutely agree. I wouldn't trust Daniel as far as I could throw him. Sorry, Daniel, I just wouldn't. Um, and the whole of his family appear to be kind of in the know somehow, I think. His dad was chasing people who were searching and having a go at them. Janie is clearly involved in some level of protection of the boys. But equally, Pink Clover, I agree, I can't completely figure it out. I think there are so many things going on here that it's really difficult. Um, Drippy, I completely agree. Daniel has a history, I think, of getting away with manipulating people and lying and convincing people of things. But that's people from that area. It is not people around the world who are experienced in dealing with crimes and difficult situations and, um, spotting that type of behaviour. Um, Janie, I'm not so sure that she's necessarily an experienced manipulator. I think she strikes me more as the kind of strong, direct, I don't care if you know the truth or some lie that I make up, but you're not gonna say a word and you're not gonna do anything against what I want. Um, that's the kind of vibe I get, but I may be wrong with them. Pearl, I think all of the communication that we have is so full of contradictions, inconsistencies, and just stories that don't make any sense, and focus points and, you know, points that are problematic for people that don't make sense given what the situation is supposed to be, that there is clearly something underlying that's happened. and I really do get the impression that the children may, in my opinion, have been neglected, left to their own devices, treated poorly in that home, um, and certainly were second fiddle to Daniel's other children in Jamie's eyes. I don't think charges will come though until the police have got everything absolutely kind of nailed down in terms of the evidence. Susan, I do also hope that it doesn't become a cold case, and I think, we need to, as a community, kind of keep the pressure on for it not to be. Yeah, I'd love to get my hands on all of them, if I'm honest, for a oh dear, I've just murdered my, pen collection. Um, I'd love to get my hands on Daniel, in particular, um, in an interview and really, put together a proper interrogatory interview with him. But I know that the RCMP have done that already, and it would be wonderful to see those. I don't think we ever will, but it would be fabulous. Temu, Mariska, is, it's like a cheap version of Amazon, really. Um, so Daniel said he taught one-on-one with Kent. I think Kent would do a pretty decent job of asking the hard questions, but what his answers would be and whether there'd be any less inconsistencies is, questionable. But yeah, I'd like to see it, live though, uh, so we all get to know exactly what he says and how he says it and his demeanour and everything. And I'm sure that, if it meant that we got to hear, Daniel speak, then Sunny might, uh, provide the use of her platform. I certainly would if Ken wanted to do it here, but obviously it'd be more, appropriate on Sunny's. Okay, so let's move on. So Daniel's been saying to YouTube that he believes that the kids, uh, believes you had the kids taken that morning and he woke up when you came back to bed. Your grandmother's cousin has been thinking the same thing. He too has been on social media. Who are you protecting Meadow from now? And Malehya's answer to this is, "Oh my F, I can't even listen to that I've heard all this." And CPS is who she's protecting Meadow from. Let him say whatever he wants. I can't say anything to anyone anymore. So this isn't a denial, let alone a reliable denial. So that's what I've got to say in terms of her response to that. But that being said, I think I might do a similar response. And then in terms of protecting her from CPS, well, she doesn't need to. She was given the ability to have custody as long as she was under supervision. So as long as she didn't, um, do what she did in the end, which was, not comply with the conditions, then she'd have been fine. She confirms that a lawyer could speak on her behalf, but nobody has, not even to make an appeal to the media. Now, if I'd retained a lawyer, I would, as her, get them to make a prepared statement from me, asking for help in the right way, and maybe with me there as Malaya, showing the emotion that comes with the message. Um, and Belinda said, "So Daniel's putting all eyes on you," and Malaya says, "Seems like it. But I'm not following social media, and I've asked people to respectfully not send me things, and if they feel it's a concern to send it to the police. I do not believe that she is not following what's happening. And if she's not doing it herself, which she may be finding difficult to do because there is criticism of her, then she may be getting someone close to her to follow it and then report back. But I'd be gobsmacked if she's not following what's being said about her missing children." Um, and then, she goes on to say the truth always comes out. Now, that indicates that she knows that there's something that needs to come out. So what do you know, Malaya? What is it that you know that you think needs to come out? That would be my question to you at this point. And that's the end of the kind of thoughts on the little bits that we've got from Malaya. Partway through doing Daniel's, I apologise, I've been slow. I was gonna focus on it this week, and then we went and adopted a dog, and everything went to pot. I'll post a picture of the new dog on the channel so that everybody can see what's been keeping me busy, or who. Hey, Effie. Yes, she's come to join in. Is there anything you'd like to say, Princess? To speak into into the microphone? Says no, no, thank you. She's just looking at me like I'm crazy for talking to myself. Oh, thank you, Missy. Just looking to see what you guys are saying. So, you know, I order an absolute ton from Amazon, an absolute ton of things. But I'm nowhere near as bad as my 19-year-old daughter, who literally has packages coming like every day, several. I wish I had that much spare money that I could have several packages a day coming. Although this week we've had quite a lot coming because we've had to get new things for the dog. It's not the same size as any of our previous dogs, um, that we've still got things from. So we've had to get like a brand new harness and lead set, and we've ordered a fancy collar. So I've actually ordered the 2 dogs matching, um, purple soft leather, like nubuck leather collars with their names and contact safety details engraved on them, which lovely, but they've not arrived yet. Um, yeah, and she's needed loads of new stuff, so, um, yeah, lots and lots of things. Oh my god, Tim Hortons, my children are obsessed with. And Lean on Me, absolutely. If you are accused of something as serious as having your children taken away and then reporting them missing and this whole palaver kicking off. When you're talking to the grandmother of those children, you would absolutely deny it categorically if you hadn't done anything or if you didn't know what happened. And I don't think necessarily that Malaya was physically involved, but I do think she's got some knowledge about what went on, and I want to know what that knowledge is. Um, Whether it will ever become clear is anybody's guess, but fingers crossed that we find answers so that Belinda can understand and come to terms with whatever has happened, and if by some miracle those children are still here, she gets to hold them in her arms again. But unfortunately, I think it's more likely going to be finding, um, the answers so that she can come to terms with her new reality. Belinda, I just my heart absolutely goes out to you, and I know that you already know that. Um, and hopefully we'll get the answers that you need in the end. And on that note, guys, I'm gonna bid you good night because it's 11:45 and I really need to go to sleep. But it's been lovely seeing you all, and thanks for everyone who's arrived. If you could all do me a humongous favour and before you leave, hit the like button. Um, Obviously, this is a brand new channel, and any support helps. Um, and if you've not subbed already, it's free and it makes a massive difference to me. So, if you can hit that button as well, that would be fantastic. Ripit, it has been lovely spending time with you and with everybody else, and I will see you very soon, no doubt. Night all.